last week, I'm sorry. Last week, I'll start again. Last week, a study was published of a almost complete Australopithecine skeleton that was first unearthed around 1996, 1990s, the 1990s, more or less. It was discovered in South Africa, and it has been dated to around 3-ish million years ago. Now, the study was published, and it has drawn a bit of controversy. We're going to look into the article from New Scientist, but there were many articles published on this for this study, this find. Many of the titles were just hyperbolic, so I'm going to use this one, which is the least hyperbolic of them all. I'm going to share the screen. And hello, everyone, by the way. And it is the discovery, the study, publisher of the study of Littlefoot. Now, who was Littlefoot? Littlefoot was first uncovered when Dr. Dr. Ronald Clark of the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, was asked to just classify and look into some of the artifacts that they were in the collection. And while he was going through some of the fossils there, he noticed that a foot that was first classified as a hominid, as a monkey, he noticed that it resembled, as this article shows. I'm gonna just basically summarize the article. He noticed that the foot bore a very striking resemblance to the foot bones of the Australopithecine group. Now, he later, the foot was small, and prompting, as this article says, his colleague, which he passed away, his colleague, not Dr. Clark, Philip Tobias, has dubbed it Littlefoot. Here they said it's in reference to Bigfoot hominin that's unbelievable, roam North America, whatever. Ignore these little snippets of trivia, which aren't. Now, in 1997, Clark and two of his colleagues found more of the fossil of the skeleton encased in rock in the same caves, because he knew where the original fossils were excavated. So he went there. He did a campaign. He went there and he found the same, in the same site, more of the skeleton, of the bones. So he began an excavation campaign, and he uncovered a lot of material. Now, due to the nature of the fossilization and the actual deposits, they were very delicate, and he basically spent a hell of a lot of time, a long time, removing the bones from the rock using an air scribe. It's basically a tool that shoots thin jets of pressurized air, a very, very small air pistol, because the bones would flake easily. As in association with the rock, they were really brittle. That brings us to a video which I made some time ago, which it's in my, not in the description, but in my collection, my videos, where I explain how fossilization occurs, and it is very, very difficult. Just tying it in now. He spent literally about 20 years preparing the fossils, the remains, so removing them from the encased material, the encased rock. And we have now one of the most complete fossil skeletons of a hominin, an early human, the hominins. Now, from that, the study was that two groups of scientists studied the finds, And because, of course, replicas were made because you knew you can study them, but usually, if you want to do a broad analysis of the bones themselves, without getting any samples like carbon dating, etc., or not radiometric dating, etc., you usually try not to work too much with the original bones because they are very delicate. So casts are made and replicas are made to the exact specifications as much as possible. Because if you handle these delicate objects too much, they can be damaged. So that's how you basically study them. If you want to measure them, we know they do get samples, so they have basically all the information of the structure, the strength, etc., composition of the bones, etc. They date it. In this case, they could not use carbon dating because it's just too old. So they would have used another form of radiometric dating, possibly uranium, thorium, thermoluminescence, any of the other radiometric long-term dating methods that could be used to date the find. And so what did they find of who was Littlefoot? Littlefoot was an elderly female, about 130 centimeters tall, and she had sustained in her early youthful phase, when she was younger, an injury in her arm. Which one was it? Let me see. She fell on an outstretched hand. It doesn't say which one, if it was left or right, and then she suffered an injury which troubled her all her life. Now, interesting is that she belongs to the group Australopithecines. And Australopithecines, and up until now, there were two main members. There was Africanus, which is the South African species, and Afarensis. Afarensis is Lucy, you guys want to know. Discovered by the Leakey Foundation archaeologist. I can't remember that archaeologist's exact name, but it wasn't any of the Leakeys, Lewis or Mary Leakey. It was another one, and I am so ashamed not remembering them, because the Leakey Foundation is one of my inspirations to become an archaeologist. The Afarensis and Africanus until now were thought to be the only two members. The fossil was dated to 3.67 million years ago. So, and the characteristics of this fossil was, most Afarensis, most Australopithecines are, they have longer lower limbs than upper limbs. So they have longer legs than arms. The previous hominin, which here they describe it as the came before. We don't know if they were Ardipithecus was a direct ancestor of Australopithecus. We don't know, but the lineage is that Ardipithecus, a hominin that lived before Australopithecines, who were also bipedal, but they had longer arms than legs, more like the great apes. Gorillas, chimpanzees, gibbons, and orangutans. They have longer arms than legs, but the Australopithecines are characterized by having longer legs than arms. This is very important because if you have longer legs than arms, you are mostly bipedal. And most of the time you are selecting, which is another indication of evolution, not in a straight line, in a muddy delta. That's how evolution works. Some species in that muddy delta, some of the individuals or groups in that muddy delta perish or don't survive. Others do, and that's how you get to an end result. But it's not linear. So the Australopithecines spent most of their time walking upright, and they traversed possibly long distances, because it is more bipedalistic than the Ardipithecus or other of the great apes. And she was a perfect example of a bipedal hominin. Littlefoot would not have been good at carrying objects as we are, or not just because of her injury, but because there is still enough tree climbing aspects of in the skill in her, possibly in her arms and so on, than we have. I think longer fingers to grasp, etc., etc. She would have been, in this article, she would have been better at climbing trees than we were. So we know that she, where she lived, because of studying the deposits and etc., it would have been a mix of tropical rainforest, broken woodland, and grassland. This is important. For most of archaeology, they would have just concentrated on the bones, the main artifacts. They would have discarded all of the other peripheral discoveries, principally the earth that they were found in, the material where they were found in. Now, and at least since the 60s, 70s, we have been analyzing in much greater detail where the deposits laid. So from that we get all the information we know we can reconstruct their environment, and we know that then that Littlefoot lived, as it says here, in a mix of tropical rainforest, broken woodland, grassland, and so it is vitally important that when people find archaeological artifacts, to not disturb them. Call an archaeologist, because the object itself is valuable, but where it's in sight and the surrounding area is as much more as valuable as the object itself. Now, there's a controversy of this find, Littlefoot. Not just because there were two groups that are competing to publish the results, as the article says at the beginning, and Clark, who spent a lot of time, most of his life, studying it. He argues that it is a distinct species of Australopithecus. And as the thing said, Clark argued for over a decade that Littlefoot does not belong to any of the known Australopithecus species and should be named a new species in its own right. He favors it, calling it Australopithecus prometheus, because he is slightly older than Lucy. Lucy is 3.2 million, and Africanus are around 2 million years old. So this is a species that is just slightly older than Afarensis. So he wants to name it a new species. I will wait. I don't know enough of it, but I will wait until the consensus, because of course after it's peer reviewed and it goes into, they'll settle it if it's a new species or not. The name A. prometheus was first coined in 1948 by Raymond Dart to describe a piece of skull found at Makapangat, South Africa. Dart was a contributor in anthropology because in 1925 he described the first Australopithecus specimen, the tongue child Australopithecus africanus. He used a fossil to argue that humans evolved in Africa. True. And a time when biologists thought the origins lay in Asia. And Dart was ridiculed for years until he confirmed he was right, obviously. When he was doing, up until 1953, we had no means of dating. The first radiometric dating was carbon dating, radiocarbon 12-14 dating. And it just destroyed fakes like a Piltdown Man, and it confirmed these type of things. Not radiocarbon dating didn't confirm this, but it gave way to other radiometric datings, which I've described. Uranium, thorium, uranium, lead. thermoluminescence, etc., etc. There are many ways to date using radiometric. So Clark is convinced that many of the bones of Sterkfontein, including Littlefoot, are not Africanus. So he has resurrected the name Prometheus. But there are many differences, not only the skulls, but also in the rest of the skeleton, he says. They include the later face of flatter face than Africanus and had larger teeth with a bigger gap between the upper canines and incisors. This is very minutiae details that have to be done, and apparently he has done it, and this it reflects on a whole lot of the morphology of the animal itself. Of the animal, I say the specimen, because the Australopithecines were animals like we are. But Littlefoot, his diet was based on the teeth was ate almost nothing but plants. Africanus was more omnivorous, so that is a big step, because Paranthropus bosei, which when I was studying archaeology was included in Australopithecines. He was Australopithecus bosei, but they've now since reclassified him as Paranthropus bosei. He was the nutcracker man. He had big jaws to crush. He was purely vegetarian, like the gorilla is. And apparently he was Littlefoot, or his specimen also was mostly vegetarian. Now, there was, as it says here, there was a race to publish. There's a dispute between Clark and his colleague Lee Berger. Lee Berger is currently excavating the Naledi cave in South Africa, where they found Hominin lady, a new specimen, a new species which was totally unknown until recently. I've made a video about him, a couple of videos about him, and he shouldn't be present because he's very recent, around 250,000 years old. H. naledi. There's also another species, Australopithecus sebida, and that's the two species that have been discovered since Littlefoot has been uncovered. So so these two archaeologists, anthropologists have been racing to publish the results, and that's the controversy. So in 2016, they applied to the university community to ask for a closer look at Littlefoot. We had been told since at least 2008 that there were publications imminent on Littlefoot. Says Berger. Clark seems to have been slow in publishing the results, and I can possibly understand because of his technique of extracting the bones, the fossils from the rock. It takes a lot of time. But apparently Clark was a little bit. He didn't want to share his material. I don't agree. Well, I'm not going to give my opinion on that. That's not important. So they have now published it, and in the description, I've linked 4 PDFs. And they are the study and subsequent studies, etc., that have been published on Littlefoot, if you guys want to have a read. That about wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this What's Up in Archaeology. Couldn't not do this today. There was just too much. This was too important. And I felt like doing it, to be honest. And thank you, John. Thank you, Modwayne. Hello, Mitch. And anyone that's also listening, thank you for being present. And I will end it here until the next time. If I see anything that is newsworthy, I will do a video. So good night all, and have a pleasant week. Thank you. Bye-bye.